Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment here. I just want to give people a chance to get their audio preferences settled in and just for people to get in here in general. All right, so I'll go through this and I'll make sure that I type it out for people that are joining a bit later, but welcome to today's webinar, final in a series of SEM-focused webinars leading up to our SEM conference. Before we get started, I just want to cover a few technical details in case you haven't joined us for one of these, or if you haven't used Zoom webinar in the past. It's very similar, as you probably can already tell, to Zoom meeting. There's a couple key differences. The biggest one is that your cameras and mics are disabled by default. So you can't interrupt us. You don't have to worry about being seen or anything like that. But if you do need to interact with each other or with the panel, you have the option to use chat or the option of using Q&A. If you have a question, we're going to prefer you use Q&A because it's easier to kind of figure out what's been asked and what's been answered already. But if you have just comments or you want to discuss something that's been said, the chat is great for that. The big difference there between Zoom webinar and Zoom meeting is that it defaults to host and panelists. So you'll have to select everyone if you want everyone to see your message. So that concludes the technical stuff you'll need to know. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Michelle.
Great. We'll go ahead and have David share the PowerPoint, please. You're on mute, David.
And of course, sorry, now I'm having trouble pulling it up again. I had it ready.
There we go.
Sorry, everyone, just had to restart it. I'll get it up right a bit here.
No, it froze on us. Sorry about that.
5, 4, down here. Okay, can everyone see it? Is that?
Yep. Yeah, you just need to go full screen. There we go. Perfect.
Okay, sorry about
Great.
that. Okay,
Thank you so much. Thanks. Oh, first of all, thank you everyone for joining us. We're kind of excited that we could get David Paulson to do this this quick webinar for us ahead of the SEM conference on Trifecta overview of leveraging staff and resource shortages for maximum gains. This has been a crucial need. We've seen it at ACRO across the country, particularly since COVID. So next slide, please, David. So your presenter today, I'll have David introduce himself here in just a minute, a little more detail, but I'm Michelle Sandlin. I'm currently serving as the Interim Associate Executive Director at ACRO for Consulting and SEM, and I'll be your facilitator for today. Next slide, please, David. Just a little bit of etiquette. As Mike already went over, everyone's microphones and screens are muted and blocked during this presentation. Again, please use the Q&A. You can chat with each other. As again, Mike instructed, you're sending it to all and not just the host and the panelist. And we will do Q&A at the very end of the webinar. Next slide, please. Just a quick, this is our third of 3 webinars that we're doing ahead of the SEM conference. All 3 of these webinars are actually having full sessions at the SEM conference. So these are a little bit of like teaser sessions coming up for the SEM conference. And this is our last one today. And again, we're very happy David's with us. Next slide. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to David. It's all yours.
All right. Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you, Mike, as well. And it's great to have everybody here. Thank you for joining us. So just quick, a little bit about me, just so you know who's right in front of you for now. I have 15 years in nonprofit leadership and organizational development experience. over 10 years in higher education, especially enrollment management, so admissions, registrar, financial aid, student affairs. Before that, I was very involved with corporate finance for 6 years, so that helped a lot, especially on the sales side and compliance side, and just state federal reporting and especially efficiencies. I have my bachelor's of science in business management and my master's of science in organizational psychology. So I think as mentioned in the little description, I hope to bring those perspectives to this webinar for all of you. I am a certified strengths coach and workshop facilitator. So I do some workshops for other companies on the side, and as well as for universities and my own department. And again, hope to bring some of those elements into this webinar as I do for the sessions at ACRO and at SEM. And as for ACRO, I'm also the vice chair of our Admissions Policies and Practices Committee. If you happen to have submitted any sessions for the ACRO annual meeting coming up, our committee will be reviewing those and rating those, so look forward to that. I'm also the co-chair of next year's 2023 Volunteers Committee for the annual meeting, since it'll be here in Colorado and I am based here, just to be your local representative. And we just had our meeting at the conference site this past Monday. I'm excited to be planning that for anyone going. So as mentioned, this webinar I'm giving you is part, it's kind of an appetizer, if you will, for the 3-session series at SEM that I'll be presenting. All the sessions are linked in content and application. If you are going to SEM, then of course I invite you to attend all of them if you can, because they do relate to each other and feed into each other. But if you only have time to make 1 or 2, that's fine as well. You'll still have some good takeaways if you don't attend all 3. And I'm also on the slate for the NNE committee, so please vote for me if you want. In fact, stop what you're doing right now and go vote right now. I'm just kidding. Okay, so moving on. Like I said, this is part of a 3-session series. So as you know, this webinar is kind of for those that, if you can't make it to SEM, just give you a little bit of something and some takeaways. If you are going to go to SEM, then here's all 3. Obviously, they're all about an hour to an hour and a half each. So trying to cram 2 to 20 minutes of content into about 40 minutes left of the webinar would be a fire hose. So I'm definitely not going to do that. You wouldn't even know what we're focusing on. My goal today is just to give you a little of a taste of each. We'll primarily be focusing on the bricks without straw part. Again, so what I'll be presenting is SEM session 1 on Monday. Will be session 1, Escape the Matrix, breaking old habits, finding efficiencies, and doing more with less in ever-progressing education landscape. And so that's kind of starting the foundations and working with some tools and working together as groups. Session 2 will be Bricks Without Straw, advocating for new positions and resources to fulfill the immediate need and prepare for continued growth. And this was actually a popular one that was then requested by regional ACROs. So I presented this for other regions in their conferences and workshops as well. And then session 3 is kind of the culmination of all of them and how to implement everything. So harder, better, faster, stronger, using the project management journey to engage and empower through org-wide change and implementation once you have those efficiencies, new positions, and resources in place. So because session 2 is kind of the popular one, I decided I'm going to focus mostly on that, and then still hint a little bit to session 1, session 3. It'll be a little bit of everything, but just at least so we have a good direction to go and you're not kind of left wondering what exactly did we talk about today. But again, if you can make all 3 at SEM, great if you're going to be there. If you're not going to SEM at all, then this one's for you. So did you know that the information worker spends 28 days of the year simply looking for documents? That's 4 to 5 hours per week. And that's a good chunk of time when we're dealing with just capacity, workloads, time loads. The average person spends an hour commuting. Trying to move my windows around here so I can see what I'm talking about. To and from work each day. Now that might not be like a big deal to some of you. Maybe that's huge. I'm originally from Los Angeles, and so I lived about 20 miles from my job at the time, the university I was working at. But it took me a good hour and a half actually each way. So I was leaving at 6 a.m., home by 7 p.m., putting my daughters down right after. It wasn't that ideal, but we spent a lot of time on the roads. In fact, just a little little comment back in LA, especially more recently during when things started going more virtual and remote, and delivery and DoorDash deliveries. I don't know how far it spread, but definitely in LA, Taco Bell kind of started it, where they would do a Uber drop off while you're on the freeway. If you're on the 5 or the 91, and you're going to be there for about 2 hours, you just call them up, say, hey, I'm at the exit of Figueroa and 22nd, whatever, and this they drive a moped over and drop off your Taco Bell at your car window, since you probably turned it off and you're just in a parking lot on the freeway. So anyway, a big inefficiency in life in general, but especially for your workload. Workers and leadership spend 23 hours a week in meetings. 72% of them say the meetings are unproductive and inefficient. And I'm sure some of us might agree by that. Sometimes we plan those meetings, but we have to. Meetings to plan meetings and plannings to meet the plannings. 40% of employees report getting interrupted more than 10 times per day. Ain't that the truth? Especially when we went remote or quarantined, definitely getting interruptions at home. I'm sure if some of us are working hybrid, it's kind of nice to be back in the office and just close the door and get things done. 26% of an employee's day is wasted on avoidable administrative chores, unnecessary tasks, and outdated ways of working. 55% of survey respondents said they manually add information already existent in their systems. So not only are they doing chores that were outdated and not unnecessary, they're actually doing it again. It was already done and they're doing it again. And then finally, a little bit more here, people watch TV and streaming services again. Probably a lot started during the pandemic, binge watching, on average 6.5 hours per day. Now, I'm all about personal life balance, so I'm not attacking that. I'm just saying, when we say, oh, I don't have time in the day, well, maybe we do, but on average, we might be spending 6 hours a day watching TV. So you've all probably heard 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And don't worry, it's like, oh, I didn't sign up for this webinar just to learn about something I already know that everybody knows about. If you don't, then here's a little overview of it. But if you've already heard of it, then we're just kind of using this as a guideline for this webinar, just to keep us, just to have a kind of a direction. But not to worry, I obviously do have original content and some tools in here that we'll be going through. But just kind of as a starting point, when we're talking about efficiencies and being effective, and when we're looking into new resources, into new staff members, we want to, of course, be effective in that. And again, this overview is for the 3-session series. And as we're looking, as I kind of gave those icebreaker cartoons over efficiencies, my goal with you to walk away today is just to have some tools, if you can. Again, if you're going to be able to go to SEM, then I do encourage you to come to all 3 of my sessions, because then we're really going to dig deep. I have about 3 to 4 breakout times for group work. So you're going to be able to discuss with other peers, colleagues of especially upper management, whether admissions, registrar, or marketing, or student affairs, to be able to work with each other. I mean, that's the glory of ACRO and these conferences, right? Is to network, get ideas, know what's worked, what hasn't been, don't reinvent the wheel, all that kind of stuff. So if you are going to SEM, then I invite you to go to all 3 sessions, because we'll definitely be digging down, having breakout discussions, and in fact, be walking away with some maybe even tangible plans and ideas and all that. But for this webinar, I at least want to give you a couple of those tools. Again, just giving you the service, but at least you can have something. And to start off, we'll just kind of track with these 7 habits of highly effective people. So if you've I've done the certification for this as well, but if you've done this before, then you know that the first thing, of course, is to be proactive. And be proactive means to actually take responsibility, not pass the buck, not throw people under the bus, but really be proactive and think about how you can think ahead. So it has to do with locus of control. Again, I have my master's in organizational psychology, and we talk a lot about, do you tend to act entitled or victimized, or do you have a good sense of locus of control? You do have a choice. I know a lot of times we say, oh, I don't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. I had to do this. Like, well, I mean, when it comes down to it, we always have a choice. It may be a difficult one, might be between life and death, but there's still a choice. But certainly, hopefully, our jobs don't bring us to life and death. And so we do have a choice. We just need to, that's why it's good to be proactive to make sure we can make the right choice, especially when we're talking about our employees. The second habit is to begin with the end in mind. And the way that unfolds is with mental creation. So, all that brain work, brainstorming, focus on your goal, move ideas to the real world. And so, just especially, like I said, I've been a director of missions, I'm a registrar, I've overseen aspects of financial aid and student affairs, but you especially need to begin with the end in mind when you're talking recruiting cycle or matriculation to know, okay, where are we going to end off? So where do we work backwards from there, make a good calendar for our team, for roster, delegation, for travel, for deadlines, file compilation, especially from record standpoint of view. And then the third habit is put the first things first. And that's the physical creation, that's the time management, that's life management. So we're beginning with the end, but now, okay, what really absolutely is critical. And when we're at SEM, we don't have time right now, but we'll especially look at what that looks like. What is put first things first? We'll look at the Eisenhower matrix and Q1, Q2 kind of aspects. But at least for the sake of this webinar, it's good just to know where that falls into place. So let's first look into some inefficient habits, methods, and behaviors. Now, this is a matrix that I've just kind of constructed myself through my experience in consulting for other universities, and then of course being a director of various aspects of enrollment management myself. And so it's P matrix, P for Paltza, no, not necessarily. P matrix for, as you can see, all those parts are, we have past, present, and then we have process and personal. Maybe you might find this somewhere else. Maybe somebody actually coined it under themselves in a similar way, but this is at least what I like to use when I'm kind of encountering the need for a new resource or for a new staff person and looking into efficiencies. And like the 7 habits, beginning with the end in mind, putting first things first. Well, first we kind of need to look at what the inefficiencies are. And so under under past, for example, let's look at the first one, past and process. Let's fill it in. When we're thinking about the past and we're looking on the process side, we run into a lot of types of reinventing the wheel. And then when we're looking at the past, but on the personal side of things, so more of the human side. So, so you see we're kind of talking about efficiencies versus staffing. It falls into archaic methods because that's more on a behavior standpoint. And then when we go down to the present, so what's happening now, and we look at a process, some inefficiencies that we might run into is overlap, double up of work. And then on the working in the present and on the more personal human side, we're digging into the psychological, interpersonal issues or challenges or restraints or even overdone strengths, which is kind of a strengths finder turn. Again, not something I'll get into now, but we'll touch on at SEM. But so like I said, for a full hour-and-a-half session, I'll have us break up into groups and kind of talk about this. But I think maybe under the chat option, why don't we just just whatever comes to your mind. For it's not a right or wrong answer, but when you're thinking about reinventing the wheel, what comes to your mind? Whether it's, have you seen it? How's that happened, or what kind of symptoms have you seen? Go ahead and feel free to drop into the chat. Not everybody has to, but if we can just get a couple answers and just go quickly through this, that'd be cool. What have you seen in the past when you're doing like processes? What have you suffered from the past, and you've seen kind of reinventing the wheel happening? It can be an actual process. It can be an actual policy as written, or a habit. And if I'm expecting, there we go. Okay, thank you, Mike. I've seen lots of policy get wordsmithed and revisited, in my opinion, needlessly over the years. Yep, very true. And of course, it's good to revisit, but sometimes it's almost for show or for the sake of it, but really it was fine the way it was. one more maybe for reinventing the wheel. Applying new policy to all when it was really only a one-off exception. Yeah, and that's hard, right? Because sometimes if you don't write the policy and now the exception becomes a norm, only if it was nice to have had that policy. But then again, that's why we're having kind of this webinar right now, is like, how do we really weigh out what we need to waste our time on, because it could really just be that exception. And now we've taken deans and BPs into leadership council into the mix, and now we kind of made ourselves look bad. They're like, okay, well, now we know that person's going to kind of waste their time next time they think they came up with a good idea. So yeah, those are good examples. Thanks for spurring that on, Mike and Michelle. So yeah, I just filled in. Again, at SEM, we would really dig into this together, but I just kind of threw in some ideas, lack of documentation, poor succession planning, faulty onboarding, rewrapping, regifting, consultants, internal, external audits. So that's where we can kind of see things happening there. When I was working for a previous institution, under that rewrapping, regifting point, we probably went through within a couple years, 4 rounds of reorganization and restructure and redesignation. Is all these rewords, basically going through layoffs. So, and that's one way that they're trying to rewrap and to say, oh no, we're moving forward, we're progressing upward. We just need to lay some people off first, and then we'll refill the positions. But people got used to that. It's like, oh, it's another reword. It can't be good. That doesn't mean it always is, but that's why we just need to be careful when we are in fact reinventing the wheel. How are we kind of summarizing this for our staff, and is it truly going to be efficient and good for morale also? And so, speaking of morale, let's go to the personal side. For archaic methods, what kind of personal maybe reasons, excuses, justifications that you might experience with your staff or colleagues, or maybe yourself? But if you want to drop into the chat, what do we see that where we get stuck in the past and it's kind of more on a personal side? What are some archaic methods? Just look for a couple. Please don't be shy. I'm assuming since we're at a SEM webinar, a lot of us might be upper leadership, maybe mid-level management, but even if you're a frontline worker, everybody's voice matters and counts, and there's no right or wrong answers here. Not a test. Yeah, it's good. Resistance to accept and use new technology. Absolutely. I think I have that in one of my bullet points. Not utilizing your systems to their full capacity, for sure. Good one. Paper-based processes. Yep. I don't know. Relying on old paper processes. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. I could be wrong. Sounds like registrar speaking up here, because that happens a lot. Depending on if you're more an aggressive registrar or passive registrar, just kind of keeping these going. If you're a policy writer, if you're more of a record keeper, we can see archaic methods happening, and either we put up with it, or we actually might, hopefully in our institution might have a foothold to make a difference and rejuvenate that. Indicating support in meeting, but in real life, not using a new process. Yeah, for sure that that happens. Kind of going back to the meetings things. Oh, this meeting's a waste of time. I'll just support it, but then just get back to what I'm doing. Everybody says, okay, count of 3, let's break, let's do it, and then it doesn't actually happen, right? Manually entering data instead of building automated solutions. Sorry, Jody. Yeah, just like we saw, manually entering data, and then it turns out half the time that data was already there. They just didn't know how to find it. So yeah, let's thank you for sharing. Oh, all too often when you question why something is done one way and the response is, well, that's how we have always done it. Thank you, Katie. That's right. And I think that's in my. So here's what I filled in. I think y'all touched on it actually. So that's great. Looks like we're not suffering from real experience here, right? So yeah, old habits die hard, stuck in old ways, scared of change or what's new, lazy to start over, backpedal, comfort zone, stay neutral, clock in, clock out job. I just want to do my work. I just want to go. Creates extra work for others on the teams, right? before we started, I was just sharing with Mike and Michelle actually that in my previous university, I had a grad analyst who'd been there since she graduated college. She was ready to retire, so she pretty much almost been there. She would joke actually that she's been there since I was born, but I just came in as a young manager, as a young registrar, and she didn't want to move up, so fine. She just wanted to clock in, clock out, but she's my grad analyst, so she would do everything by hand when she's doing the degree audits, bless her heart. And I would ask her, hey, do you, I can let's work with IT. We can get this automated for you, pull a report when you're ready. And she said, nope. And she pulled out her highlighters and her circle templates and rulers and just start plowing away student by student. And she's like, I'll be done in 3 days for you. And I was like, okay. I mean, hey, she got it done. She did it right. And she just wanted to get out of there soon enough anyway. So it's like, you know what, that there are some times where you just are grateful as a manager and let them do their thing. But, when they leave, then you can start reevaluating. And that's, again, kind of what this overview webinar is about. We're looking at efficiencies, but we're also looking at the turnover. When those retire, when they're just done, when they leave, or if they leave in celebration, great. But now's our chance to revisit things, and maybe they did it great, but it's a chance to at least revisit. So that way the position is not rebuilt around the person. Again, you probably heard, we don't want to build around the person, we want to build around the position. Yeah, Trina, sometimes the clock in, clock out will become problematic to progress in ditching archaic systems. That's right. Very true. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so now under and see, this is all great feedback, and thank you for sharing. And if this was the long version of the session at SEM, we'd be doing this breakout groups and really be able to expand on everybody's sharing. So thank you for speaking up. So now in the present, when we deal with things that's happening now, so it's not based on the past, we're not stuck in the past, but it's actually right now in the moment. Process side of things, overlap, double up. How does overlap happen? What happens with overlap or double up work? What are your ideas? What do you think? Where did we miss something there, that now two people are doing the same thing or doing the same thing at the same time? Yeah, it's very inefficient, that's for sure. Create some PTSD when you just got done doing it, you find out someone else already did. Sometimes people do not or will not share what they are doing. Yeah, either they're just not good at communicating, or they get protective over their work. They feel like they have to protect their job for job stability. When it's like, actually, if you show yourself how much a team player you are, that's job stability. Waste of resources, yes. Karen, departments have the same functions, wasting money. That's right. Sometimes some offices get paranoid and not trusting each other. Like, say an office doesn't trust the SIS or the CRM, so they just, how many of you have saved Excel spreadsheets on the side just in case, because you didn't trust the system and you've just been doing that, and even if you did a system function, you still had that spreadsheet just as a comfort. Having department positions not communicating and staying siloed, absolutely. Can cause miscommunication with others, especially if different results are provided. Yep. It's kind of where that who's who comes along, who's doing what now, especially when you're dealing with turnover. Again, we'll touch on that a little bit. Yeah, all great input here. Thank you for speaking up. Prolongs projects getting done because of miscommunication and seeming not to understand. That's right. Some people, once they get started, they just don't want to stop. It's like, I've been working on this, for a week now or for a month now, and so I'm just going to finish this. It's like, okay, sometimes it's better to just nuke it where it stands, because it's gonna we're on the wrong trajectory. 2% degrees off. The beginning is 20 degrees off in the long distance, and better just stop now and recorrect. And it's not like it's all wasted. And I think some people worry about that their effort and time and resources are wasted. Like, no, it's a learning lesson, first of all, and we'll use this for when we get back on track, and we'll know what we did. Lack of training. individuals not willing to accept pointers or training. Yeah, hard to be uncoachable and teachable. This is great. I think we actually jumped into the psychological part too, so that's good too. So yeah, like mentioned, we have faulty job descriptions, lack of policy procedures, passive or reactive management style. So, it's not all our staff's fault. If we're a boss here on the call, sometimes it's our style, and then we tend to enable certain strengths or weaknesses or bad habits, and it's not on purpose. Sometimes we just don't even realize it till we see the symptoms and manifestations. Then we're like, oh, what have I allowed to happen? Poor cross training and backup matrix, miscommunication or competition, as we mentioned, possessive or protective. Y'all touched on it, so great job. Especially for the cross training and backup, it's that whole Mack truck triple threat scenario, right? You already have someone that's on vacation, and that's been approved for a couple months, and then someone calls in sick, and you might be the manager. You're like, okay, well, my assistant's out, my coordinator's out. I need to get in the office, or I need to drop what I'm doing and do this. And on the way in the office, you get hit by a Mack truck. And that's kind of the I guess morbid analogy that sometimes is given, but you never know what happens, right? And so if we have good cross training, good job descriptions, good policies in place, hopefully it doesn't happen. But sometimes these things are inevitable. But again, that's why we're talking about it. And then, I think a lot of people, you already said, on the psychological interpersonal side, some just don't see the problem. They're doing groupthink or peer pressure, the fear of the unknown. Again, just kind of scared. They might be on board, but they're just scared to even start. Of course, conflict of vision and budget constraints, especially if you're in upper leadership or you're in the president's cabinet. I'm blessed at my institution. I'm considered a senior leader as the registrar, and I DSO of our international admissions, kind of a higher level in enrollment management. So I do sit on our president's senior leadership council, and I'm able to to speak into things with policy, registration, and compliance, obviously, for FERPA, and just be able to be in the know and be on the informing side as well. So that helps. But sometimes, we don't always have that. So that's why it's important to consider this quadrant. The 4 E's, I'll touch on this at the end. That is something that I'll include in, even though this is the short version. And then, of course, DEI. I mean, that's we could spend a couple sessions on that by itself. So I won't even get into it. I could preach about it. But diversity, equity, inclusion is certainly something that has been around for decades, but especially more recently as an official term with official VPs of DEI and offices of DEI and resources. And that's something that we have to consider as we're even looking into inefficiencies when we talk about terms of like inaccessibility and inequity in the workplace. Okay, so as you can see, this took a good chunk of time, but I hope it's helpful because these are things that we really want to, when you're first encountering an inefficiency, when you see that something's happening, you want to, my whole point of, another point of this trifecta, actually, the whole series, is how to advocate for it. You don't want to just run in. So I'm kind of taking a little sidestep note right now. We don't want to just go in saying, oh, I'm busy and I'm overworked and I'm understaffed, and so I need this resource, I need that staff person, and complaining to the controller or the committee, the budget committee, or even the president himself. Unfortunately, we're just going to sound like almost everybody else. Everybody's busy, everybody's overworked, understaffed, and how do they know ours is better than anyone? We all think, and it's good, we are protective of our own, and we specialize in our office and what we do. And of course, we think that ours is the most pressing. Like I said, I've been in director level of almost all areas of enrollment management by now. So as the registrar, I could say, hey, this is FERPA. If you don't want us to shut down over compliance issues, I need another assistant registrar. Or as admissions, hey, we're tuition revenue based. I bring in the numbers and I help pay for your office and your seat there, your position there with the students. So I need more admissions counselors. Or if you're financial aid, we reward the financial aid packets and disperse those to keep the students. So I need more financial aid advisors. So we could just go around, point the fingers. So it's not, we don't want to think in terms of competition. And I'll touch on that a little bit. obviously in collaboration. And how does this impact our whole institution? How do we work together in this? How does my proposal for what I see as a need, an important need for a resource or a staff person, help the whole institution, and doesn't just sound like I'm just me complaining? Because I'm kind of cutting to the chase here, but if we're right, great. But if we're wrong, now we're probably gonna be lower on the priority list next time we come around asking for something, because like, oh, you're the one that just made a whole sob story and was emotional about it instead of giving me the facts and the data. But if we're right and we do give the facts and the data and the good, thinking through like this with this P matrix or other tools you might have, we can prove it. We can show, look, I've considered it. I'm not just reacting. I'm not being dramatic. This is real stuff. This is a legit issue. And then if you are granted it, they'll remember you the next time as well. They either say, okay, not this time, not this budget season, but the next cycle, we'll make sure to work your position in. Or if you do get it the next time, they'll also remember, oh yeah, you had a good argument last time. I trust, whoever's speaking, whether your controller, your president himself or herself, saying that, I remember you brought this up last year, you had a good argument, and yes, I see the need again. Okay, so we're not actually obviously doing a group exercise, but I'm just showing you this as an example of what we'd be doing at SEM. And we'd have about 3 or 4 of these per session, per topic, and really just be able to dig in together with our colleagues and get ideas and just bounce it off each other's, mixing analogies here, crying each other's shoulders and getting things off our chest. Okay. Don't have time for this, but these are more icebreakers. Come to SEM, you can find out. Yay. Just more cartoons. So now that we looked at that one table, let's go back to 7 habits now. So the first 3 were about kind of the where do we begin, and now this is kind of where do we end up, and going into more of the implementation side. So think when. And so, like I said, we want to think cooperatively, not competitively. Now, yes, we have competitive schools, even sometimes competing priorities between offices, but we're still cooperative. And that's why we think about sister schools in that sense, or, or cooperative office, especially in enrollment management. Sometimes if all the offices report to, say, the VP of enrollment management, then that helps, right? But sometimes you have the registrar might report to student affairs, or the financial aid office will report to finance, or the controller or VP of finance, which makes sense too. So it's not always under one umbrella, and which is fine, but which is why it shows the need for cooperation. And in fact, if you do think cooperatively, the fact that you're able to show that, hey, we don't even report to the same VP, and yet I'm still thinking of your office and what will be beneficial as I propose this resource and staff person, then that actually makes you look even better. So again, be mutually beneficial and satisfying, and of course, balance your courage and your consideration. Seek first to understand, then be understood. This is actually my favorite in all of life in general as well. Kind of like I said, we could be prone to speak out of emotional or stress or anxiety when we need a new resource or a staff person. Yeah, sorry. I promise you, I hope I'm giving good takeaways even now if you can't make it to SEM, but I am, that is to say that that's like, 4 hours worth of stuff trying to crash course right now. But yeah, seek first to understand, then to be understood, how as much as possible, especially if you work in student affairs, if you've been a counselor, advisor, career coach, about the whole mirroring, or reflecting, or when you say, I wonder, just all that kind of stuff. That can also be used not just as a counselor, but even as a administrative worker or as a manager, a boss, to really just try to especially if there's complaints coming along. And look, I can't be doing all this work by myself. I can't be the only coordinator in this office. Or maybe your assistant director comes and says, I need my own assistant. And quite frankly, I've kind of become your assistant. And so I need my own, just be cool, just calm down, take a breath, help them calm down, seek first to understand, okay, tell me about it. What do you think? And because honestly, half the battle with people, all of us as humans, is we just want to be heard, right? I mean, that's a lot of what DEI comes down to, is sense of belonging, sense of inclusion. And a lot of it is just being heard, knowing that our voice matters, our opinion matters, and all that, and that we have a platform to speak, we have a safe space, so to speak. And that's a lot of times all our employees want. That's a lot of times what we want as employees. And that's just that we were heard, even if the answer is no, at least we know it's out there. So anyway, don't just listen with the intent to reply. Don't filter through your own life experiences. Don't try to relate unless cued for your point of view. Again, a lot of times we might say, hey, I've, like a salesman tact, I used to be in sales. I know how you feel. I felt that way before, and I found that the whole feel felt found, which can be helpful, but we're not necessarily trying to sell here. We're trying to be good, holistic, transformational leaders types here, even servant leaders. And then synergize. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. We want to value our differences, mental, emotional, psychological, and then our diversity of strengths, our strengths and diversity. As a strengths coach, like I said, I also do those kinds of workshops. I like to emphasize we have diversity in our strengths, we have strength in our diversity, and it goes both ways. And yeah, it just kind of goes into the whole thinking of the team. I think we're wanting to leave what 5-10 minutes for question answers. So I'll try to not race through, but just kind of keep things moving here, because I see that's 11:41 now. So yeah, you know what? Let's go through this, because now we're looking into some solution types. Again, this is not a solution. This is not a formula. It's not a guaranteed cookie cutter equation for you all, but this is just another tool to try to get you going, again, just for a short webinar's sake. And then I do have one other kind of section that I want to touch on, but I'll just read through it. And as as Trina pointed out, I'm kind of teasing for SEM, but I'm happy to share some materials after SEM. And of course, so you can see how all of this actually unfolds, because we're just looking at the snapshots right now. But this is called what I call an asset grid. And again, it's just something that I've seen helpful in my time of advising for universities, being a consultant, and just kind of things came together over time. Maybe it's out there in some different form or matter or title, but this is just the way I like to put it together. And I hope this helps you as you're developing an argument or advocating for a new resource or a staff person. And as you see, it divides up into direct and indirect, and then static and dynamic. And the way those kind of unfold is, and this will be quicker, because it's kind of just at a glance. But under direct and static, you have tools. Okay, so tools remain the same. If you just think about it, what would happen if you just let it sit there? Well, if you let a tool sit there, it's going to stay there. But a tool directly impacts your work. Whereas under money, if you let money sit there, it'll just sit there. If you invest it, it'll grow. But if it sits there on the table, it's going to sit there. And it's indirect though. Money will buy you something. It'll buy you a tool. It'll pay a staff person. So as you're thinking about resources and personnel, or staff, and you want to try to divide them up into this if you want. And they're dynamic. You have direct and dynamic. So you have personnel, because if you leave, so on the same question, if you leave a person sitting on the desk, well, yeah, they're gonna, if you lock them in the office, they're gonna get old and die. So yeah, people change. We get sick, we get old, we grow, we get better, we get worse, whatever. We're dynamic, but we have a direct impact on the work. We do the work itself. And then under dynamic and indirect, we have time. Time, if you let it sit there, it's going to take away. I think time is the most frustrating resource that we have, because it'll take away whether you like it or not. Can't add time to your life, can't take it away, but it's indirect. Time doesn't actually do your work for you. It's just another resource. So at this point, I would probably ask for people to drop IDs into the chats, but I don't want to waste time on that. Or I'm sorry, not waste time, but I don't want to spend time because it's pretty obvious. You just think about tools. You think about things like systems related documents, especially virtual meeting tools, especially after the pandemic. Vendors of virtual resources really had a ball sharing their platforms and how to, and of course we have Zoom and Teams and Snapchat and all these things that were already around, but they really exploded during that time. And if we're still archaic and old fashioned, we have vaults and filing cabinets, but hopefully we're moving towards electronic versions, especially post-pandemic. And for personnel, we have admins, we have advisors, committees, student workers, temps. And, the point of this chart is just to try to think, to remind yourself, what all do I need? Maybe I don't need an all-out associate director. Maybe I just need a couple coordinators per campus or something. Or maybe this is too much for an admin. Maybe I do need to actually step it up and ask for an assistant director at least to build. You want to think about how you're building out. Do you just need to fill a spot? Do you just need this campus is missing a coordinator, so I just need to complete fill the bubble there and give equal representation for all the students on other campuses? Or do I actually need to have an assistant director that's going to oversee more coordinators? And I want to have that done because it's easier to then ask for a coordinator after you've asked for the higher position, right? Now you can just build underneath. But if you ask for coordinator, say, oh no, never mind, what I needed was an assistant director. It's like, oh, sorry, it's too late. Now that costs more, and now that's you're asking for more, and we gave you an inch and you asked for a mile, kind of a thing. And so that's why it's good to just really think it through before you run into your higher up's office, say, I need this, really think it through. So under money, all kinds of money, again, it's just to be mindful. We have budgets, we have grants, we have sponsors, donors, high profile, VIPs, incentives and bonuses, shareholders, stakeholders, fundraising, donations. Especially if you're thinking about resources, if you're thinking about outsourcing or insourcing, can this resource be done by our own, or do we need to have a vendor offer their service time as well and not just the product? And then under time, so we have all kinds of versions of times: meetings, events, trainings, vacation days, sick days, evenings, weekends, holidays, overtime. And now, as we're talking post-pandemic, we have things called working remote and working hybrid. So that's also a time-oriented thing, because how much time are you going to be in the office versus at home? And then back to tools, where we're talking about everything from someone using their own computer towards getting them a laptop to be mobile, to they're using their own internet and air conditioning. Just you have to take all that into account and how that's going to help build your argument. So I'm going to try to end at 11:50 here, so just a few more minutes, because there's actually a seventh habit. It's sharpen the saw, which basically means keep reevaluating, keep revisiting all the other 6 habits. And I removed the slide because I was all trying to trim down. Now, so this is actually where we get into a 3-step game plan. It wouldn't have made sense if I didn't go through the other charts, but I'm just going to go ahead and read through it. Again, this is another thing that we would actually take some good time to break out into group sessions, but I'm just going to flat out give it to you. Again, this is not a formula or cookie cutter equation or solution, but this is what has helped me get new positions approved. I'm just recently hired another assistant director, or assistant director, and I'm hiring another one now at another campus, and it has worked. If it doesn't work for you, don't get mad at me, but I don't see it, it's not a guarantee, but it's just to at least help you show that you have a game plan in place. You're not just looking anxious and just pulling weight and authority to ask for something, because we want to, the way we do this, the way we get, it's not there's kind of the 3 aside from this 3-step game plan. I love thinking in threes, but there's kind of a 3-phase. Like there's your brainstorming through it, right? And then there's the actual advocation and approval, and then there's the actual implementation of it. And in that implementation part is that's where my 3rd session gets you. That's where it affects employee morale and buy-in and all the psychological part and the org-wide change. And that's where we're going to be thinking that, great, I got my position, I got my resource, but how's that going to impact everyone now as we have a new person or we have a new technology? We don't want technology burnout. We don't want another office to be jealous now because we got our position, they didn't get theirs. It's going to affect things and our teamwork, and it's supposed to be a good thing. It's supposed to be celebrative, but there's always going to be that officer, that person, like, oh well, they got theirs. That's nice for them. They got their assistant. I need an assistant. We don't really want that. So that's why from the beginning I want to show, look, I have been mindful of the entire university, of every office, of our mission, vision, and our priorities from the beginning. And so the fact that I have this now is not just to toot my horn or yay, look at me, but it's going to benefit you as well. And that's why I have the proof to show it. It's going to help your processes. Or yes, we might give some things to you and empower you to do it, but we're also going to be able to take some things back that maybe you were covering for us. So thank you, and you're welcome both ways. Where are we here? Number 2. Prove how you've exhausted all other alternatives. So that's kind of why we looked at the initial charts of inefficiencies, archaic methods, the past, the present, all that, to show, no, I've tried. I'm not just asking, I'm not even proving that what I'm asking for will help. I've tried and I've shown you that I did it. Even myself, I rolled up my sleeves, even as an upper management person. I've gotten to the trenches and done the dirty work, and I've tried and we've stretched ourselves thin. And quite frankly, we're falling out of compliance, or we're running out of budget, or we're losing students because of it. And you throw those 3 out, that'll kind of perk some ears up. And then demonstrate the impact. If the position or resource is not filled from all strategic enrollment management perspectives. So now we're, it's kind of the pain part of sales. It's like, here's why we need it. I've shown what happens if we don't. Because I haven't had it, and now here's what happens if we don't get it, basically, to sum it up. So I want to leave some time for Q&A, but just to really flash through, and I'll dig into it. Here I go again. I'll dig into it at SEM, but after SEM, I'm happy to provide the materials. But you can see that we really, in our group breakout sessions, we'll really kind of dig into each of those points of the 3-step game plan. So I just want to highlight again, we don't want to make it a sob story on letter D or sound self-centeredly desperate. And we also want to be vulnerable on letter F. Use specific past examples of gaps, issues, and errors. It's okay to admit, remember that time that we fell out of compliance because that's because I didn't have this position filled or this resource. And it's okay. It's better to actually show, even though we're admitting to this past mistakes, it's showing that's why that happened. It wasn't just because I or my team slacked off on it. So it's okay to be vulnerable in that sense, and now show some credibility and honesty there, transparency. Again, under proving how we exhausted all alternatives. Again, it shows a lot. If we've done the work ourselves, especially if we're at upper management level, we're not just kind of high and mighty on our throne. We've suffered ourselves, and we don't want to see that. And then on the third one, demonstrate the impact if it's not given. So here's where I spend some time and dig into each office, but this is just to help us be circumspect of each other. Your office, but you don't need me to tell you to go talk to your counterparts and your colleagues. But these are just ways that you can kind of show that you've been mindful. So real quick, because I said I would, the 4 E's of engagement, because when you say, oh, I want to be an empowering boss. Okay, well, there's a lot more to it than just be empowering. It actually, you can divide it up into 4 things. And again, we dig into this more in a full-blown session, but it's just to show you that when you say you want to be an empowering boss, what does that really mean? You've got the resource now, you've got the position approved, and now it's time to implement. And this is kind of what the third session goes into, is an implementation of it. And because they all mean different things. Educate, and they go, they start with educating. It's onboarding, it's training, it's one-on-ones. Then you actually equip. It's more on the process technical side, like we talked about earlier, access levels, systems as solutions, budgets. And then you're actually enabling, as far as career goes, as far as diversity, equity, inclusion, as far as opportunities. Empowering is really the final part of it, the culmination. That's where you get into belonging and decision making, allowing them to make their own decisions, make decisions for others, and communication. So I'm just giving a quick overview of this. When you say, okay, I want to be empowering, then just know what you're really saying when you do that. So yeah, here's a question. And thanks for the segue, because otherwise I'll just keep going because I'm too excited. But a question here is, what if we must wait for the strategic enrollment plan to hire it started? It's been about 3 years and we've been waiting. You're not alone there. I don't think, I'm pretty sure you're speaking to the choir here. That's exactly what happened with my recent hire of my assistant director. I've been waiting for 3 years, and for a while, it was just me. Then I had a coordinator. I've kind of built it from the ground up. But what if we must wait? I mean, Yeah, that's the hard part, and there's the part where it's inevitable, but and we have to just pray and hope that the wait will pay off and have proven itself. And so, sometimes it's a refining fire, right? There are things that we really thought we've proven, like I said, the three-step game plan, that we've proven we've done the work, we've done what happens if it's not fulfilled, and while we've been waiting, we tried even more. We're already squeezed out sponge, and yet we still squeeze out a few more drops. And if it's 3 years, then hopefully through these 3 years, you've proven what's cool about that is you're able to prove year over year, trend over trend. Maybe you've collected some data and created some graphs that show this is where we were, whatever you're trying to show, a decline in productivity or incline in issues. Maybe you're talking about like issues that come up, student complaints. You've shown this is where we were in 2020. Now in complaints 2021, if you do feedback surveys with students or coworkers, 2022, here's where we are. And by this projection, if you wait another year, we're going to be at this point. So I think obviously the longer you've waited, the more of a chance you have to prove that we are going to be worse off. And so it kind of goes back to the sales technique of pain, where you want to show that pain. I know it's a lot of work. Again, I've been there, and I am there kind of right now in another position, but to hire, it's a lot of work. It's like, because we know our job, we know what we've been working on painstakingly, minute after minute, and yet sometimes we're asked, well, how many minutes did it take you to do this? And how many minutes? That's like, oh my gosh, you're going to really make me go through how many minutes it takes. Like you can't. Sometimes you just can't put a number on things because there's so many more X factors involved. But if you can prove time taken, if you can prove escalation of issues or declination of productivity, especially over 3 years, that can actually be a strength for you to say, kind of the third, 3 years, 3 strikes, you're out kind of a thing. We're on a solid path of spiraling decline of efficiency and compliance. In fact, the nice thing about on the registrar side, you can pull FERPA and all that. So anyway, that's a little bit of tip. Thanks for the heads up. We have 3 minutes left. Let's take another question. If any.
Sorry,
Want to go ahead and move us on the slides, David, to.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so there's another thing, and that's all stuff I already said. So yeah, here we go. Go ahead.
Great, thank you so much. Actually, I'll be attending your session at SEM because I want to hear more about number 3 in the 3-step plan. There's a lot of content there, really is. Thank you so much. It's really informative. Just remind everybody that about the SEM Conference, November 13th to 16th. We are going to be in Toronto. Haven't been in Canada in quite some time. Very excited about it. The link is right there for the conference. Next slide, please, David. If you want a quick overview of what some of the sessions, particularly that we're really excited about the plenaries this year. We've got some really hot topics for those sessions. A lot of deep dive. You've already got a taste of the 3 that David will be doing. Very excited about the staffing resource piece. It's been huge, particularly this past year. And don't forget about the roundtables and forums. You're getting just a little taste here of what you'll see at SEM. Next slide, please. Okay, any final questions? I think we have a minute or 2 left.
Yeah, just that minute. I think, David, you got the one that was asked in chat there.
Okay.
From Connie already.
Great.
But yeah, barring that, I guess.
Yeah, I'll just, sorry, since I'm driving, since I'm in control. This is another thing I'll be sharing at the 3rd session is implementation. So you can see this is what my brain on paper. It's kind of crazy, but that's how it works. And I'll be happy to unlock my brain for those of you attending, and then share it with, if you can't make it, share it later.
Yeah, David, if you could, I don't know if you mind sharing this, the PowerPoint at some point. We can post it to the website later on.
Absolutely.
And for everyone else, you can access the recording starting in about 30 minutes or so, using the same link that you used to access this live session. And from there, you can view the transcript and a record of the chat as well. All right. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your days. Good afternoon or good morning if you're on the West Coast.